Hello, welcome to Forest Focus. As Nottingham Forest suffer an injury scare around the one player we said couldn't get injured, we'll discuss Chris Wood hobbling off as New Zealand qualify for the World Cup, rate the latest transfer talk, and for a bit of fun, international break fun, pick out the players we'd like to see signed this summer. Joining me to discuss all that, first of all, is Pete Blackburn. Morning, Pete. How are you?
Morning. Yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. I noticed. I'm going to just adjust my camera. No, that's done nothing. The picture frames look wonky, and people behind keep saying it's distracting. They are level, I think, but yeah. So apologies for everyone who's distracted by those. Mikey, Clarke, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you? How's the international break been for you?
Had a lovely weekend away in Bath and Bradford-on-Avon. Lots of walking, as I was saying. Feeling old. This is proper middle-aged man conversation, isn't it? About country walks in Bath and nice pub lunches. And I'll go full middle-aged man and say that the doctor says I've got borderline high cholesterol, so I've started eating better, and I had vegetarian food quite a lot while I was away as well. So there you go. I don't know what Pete's emotions are watching this. He's kind of fidgeting. I don't know if he's disgusted or bored.
I was just thinking middle age seems a bit generous to you, given that before this started you gave us a display of your motorised blinds that very much had the feel of an elderly man's bedroom.
It's definite assisted living vibes. Yeah. Right, let's get cracking then. We mentioned Chris Wood hobbled off in the second half this morning or night time in New Zealand as they beat New Caledonia to qualify for the World Cup finals. So congratulations to them and Chris Wood. Hobbled off early in the second half. Shout out to a couple of people. I saw Jamie Martin on Twitter post what looked like him injuring himself taking a shot, landing on his hip. Ali Martin, friend of the show, Guardian cricket writer, said he was watching the game, weirdly, and it didn't look too bad when he went off. And he was on the pitch at the end with the celebrations. So that's where it is. I've not heard any update about his fitness situation at all. We've got a bit of time before we next play. Brighton, the FA Cup on Saturday, then Man U next Tuesday. Pete, panicked, alarmed, pretty chilled about it. What do you think?
Chilled, because I don't think there's anything to worry about yet, is there? We've got no idea what's actually going on with him. I mean, I'm just going to view it through an optimistic lens and hope that him sort of half hobbling but half jogging off is a good sign. Obviously not off on a stretcher and nothing that looks incredibly dramatic, but you do worry that he's the sort of player who wants to stay on and keep getting lots and lots of goals because he's obviously in a rich vein of form. But I'm looking at it through an optimistic lens and hoping he's just looking after himself. Like you say, there's a fair bit of time to the next game. I wouldn't have started him against Brighton anyway, because I think Taiwo's a good threat in that sort of game and needs minutes. And I think, yeah, hopefully it's enough time for Woody to get back to whatever full fitness is. I'm going to choose not to worry at this point, but certainly it will make things a little bit more edgy if we do find out that it's a long-term injury.
What about you, Mikey, in terms of relying on Taiwo potentially getting ahead of ourselves a bit, but how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I kind of agree. I would have played Taiwo at Brighton anyway, so he's got a little bit extra time to recover, and you've seen the clip of him running off the pitch, and he did run off the pitch, so he didn't get carried off or anything. So fingers crossed. And I think in general we've been quite fortunate with injuries this season. You know, you compare us to some of the other teams. Bournemouth have got 13 players out. We've all heard about Tottenham and their manager moaning every 5 minutes about the amount of players he's not had a chance to pick. You know, when they played at the City Ground, they ended with 2 midfielders at centre-back, didn't they? Archie Gray and Bissouma. You know, can you imagine us ending with Ryan Yates and Anderson at centre-back? So apart from Danilo in the opening game, we've had a few niggles here and there. But in general, we've been really fortunate, and I'm just hoping that's continued. And it's just a little knock. He knows his body, right? He's, what is he, in his 30s. He's not a young kid. It was New Caledonia, with all due respect. He's probably come off because he's probably felt something and wants to rest it. So fingers crossed, all should be okay. But like I said, I probably wouldn't have started him at Brighton anyway. So he's got a little bit longer to recover, and he's going to be crucial in the run-in. But let's not panic yet until we hear anything. And just, you know, fingers crossed he's all right.
It's worth saying as well, I think, isn't it, that we're in a period of the season where other players in the team have started to contribute. Something that we were a bit concerned about earlier on in the season, I guess, with perhaps the wingers not really stepping up in those early days and getting goals and assists and such like. But they're in red hot form. I think we can see that we've had a fair bit of production from Gibbs White as well. I think Elliot Anderson is stepping up. We've got the Elanga threat at corners with the likes of Milenkovic and such like. So I don't think it's the same stuff. And I think the other side of it is that we've talked a lot of times about Taiwo, and I think there's a real sort of polarization around him with the fans. But I think the truth is that he's looked pretty lively when he's come on in more recent games, and I think we know that Taiwo can give opposition centre halves a real pain in the arse day and occupy them. And if we've got a player who can do that, then hopefully it will give the time and space for those form players out wide and such like to do some damage. So I don't think it's panic stations. Fingers crossed it's nothing major, but at least we've got players contributing across the pitch and it's not just a Chris Wood team right now.
Just check, does anyone know if Taiwo was in the Nigeria squad or not? I see Greg in the chat saying he wasn't.
I've no idea, actually.
No. I'll
Feels
have
like
a
should
look at that. Yeah, I'll have a look at that now while we talk. Would he not would not have started for you in the regardless against Brighton, Pete?
No, there was when you were asking about who was free to do the pods this week, I was vaguely thinking about it in case I was doing the preview pod. And no, I wouldn't have started Woody personally, because I'm higher on Taiwo than a lot of people are, and I think that just comes because it's obviously been an incredibly tough period for him. But I do think that he looks like he's getting much closer to what he was. And even, to be honest, even a Taiwo that's not 100%, and perhaps we'll never see that again, I do think he just really does occupy players. I don't think people like playing against him because he's so strong and awkward, and it's pretty hard to predict what he's going to do. But he is also that threat in behind, as well as being powerful and able to occupy people. And I think also we've seen in the moments that he's come on, he's linked up pretty well as well. He's been able to get the ball under some sort of control. It doesn't matter how pretty that looks, but he's been able to do that and then find a pass. And I think it's, in some ways that the job that we need someone to do up there is quite simple. I think Chris Wood does an amazing job occupying people with the sheer threat of the fact that if you give him chances, he's going to score right now, and his brilliant movement. I think Taiwo can do it in a different way. And like I say, there's threat from other parts of the pitch right now, and if we have to make do about Chris Wood, I don't think it's not making me think right, season's over. Not at all.
Thanks to a couple of people in the chat. I see Philip here as well saying Taiwo is not on international duty, which makes me relieved, because I did joke that Taiwo would have got injured as well, and then we really would be in bother. So no, we'll probably move on from that. I've messaged Jason Pine, who's been on the show a couple of times, who was commentating on the game. So if he says anything, then I'll post it on Twitter. But I don't suppose that the New Zealand managers can get asked about it, to be honest, and they qualify for the World Cup, so we might have to wait and just see what happens. But I'm not panicking either, like the other lads. Right, we were going to primarily discuss transfer stuff today, just for passing the time of the international break, talking about all the players we've linked with. So we'll mention who we've been linked with so far, what these chaps are feeling about it, and then we've picked out a couple of names that we'd like to see side. I did say one, and Pete has sent me probably most of the Football Manager database, I think, of names that he'd like to see.
Did you only say one?
I did say one, yeah.
Oh, I definitely ignored that.
It can be two if you've got more ideas.
I think that was probably a willful mistake. I just didn't want to hear that you only wanted one, so I went in deep. I even assembled a bit of a transfer committee like the old days. I got David Pleat in, all the lads, and we've got a nice long list of names for you.
You did. Talking of random going off topics, have either of you seen this thing about Scunthorpe United about being taken over by one of these My Football Club reboots or regens, staying with the Football Manager theme? A bit worrying, isn't it?
It always feels a bit worrying when you see those sorts of organisations getting involved, doesn't it? I think, where was it that we had the recent example in it? It went belly up pretty quickly. I forget where that was. I mean, I certainly wouldn't be feeling great about it if it was my club.
They did try and buy our club, I remember. I was reading, there's an article on The Athletic. My Football Club, the first two clubs they wanted to buy were Forest and Leeds. then they realise they've only got 500 grand to spend.
Yeah, you might need a few more zeros on the end of that budget.
Yeah, I think so. Even back then in 2010 or whatever it was. Yeah. Right, let's get into some of these transfer rumours then, see what everyone thinks about it. We'll rewind the clock to last week and talk about, Viktor Gyokeres is the biggest name and the most fun name that we've been linked with. I think everyone knows all about him, but I'll just put up a little graphic around him, and then I'll ask Mikey what he thinks about it. Viktor Gyokeres, 26, obviously made his name in England initially with Coventry, I guess, after moving from Brighton. Went to Sporting Lisbon, absolutely banged in goals for fun. 40 goals in 41 games thus far this season. He's got a contract till 2028, so his value is going to be very high and linked with lots of Premier League clubs. Lots of fun, Mikey. I think he'd fit us perfectly. Is it remotely realistic, do you think, if we're in the Champions League next season?
The only way we're going to sign somebody like him is to make a huge sale, I would have thought. So if you look at, I think you did a podcast a few days ago where you looked at the revenue, didn't you, Matt, and the numbers and the differential between, say, Newcastle spend and Villa spend once they hit that Champions League bracket. And it's maybe not as much as you think. So to outlay a whole wedge of money on a player like this, yes, he'd suit us. Yes, he's ripping up trees, but it's a hell of a lot of money and you're going to blow most of your budget on it. So you'd have to offset it with a big player sale. And I'm all for keeping this squad together as much as possible and seeing how far they can go. So whilst it's lovely and it's great and he would fit us, I can't see it happening. I will say one thing, though, and it links to what I'm going to talk about later in terms of the players I'd like to see in. We should have bought him, or somebody should have bought him when he was in the Championship. There are so many good players in the league below us. And I don't know whether it's a bit of arrogance or a bit of, or we can't possibly fish in those waters. Let's wait until he rips it up on the international stage. He was brilliant for a Coventry team that were half good. He scored about 20 goals for him. He was class if you watched him. And there's been a few players in recent seasons, like Semenyo, for example, Lewis Cook, players ripping it up in the Championship. And it takes somebody like a Bournemouth or whoever to go for them and to bring them into the top league. So I just think, yes, it will be a great signing for us and he'd be brilliant. And he'd be a wonderful replacement for Chris Wood. I just think the boat's gone on this one for us. And we should be trying to learn from this and saying, actually, well, before they make this big money move, before they tick that final box, what we're all about, look at our recruitment over the last few years, which has been wonderful. We've got these players before they make that final move. So, like a Murillo or somebody like that. So I just think we kind of missed, not just us, I just think in general, people missed a trick on this one. And I'm going to name a few later that are knocking around in the Championship later that we can bring in before they do that. So to answer your question, it'd be brilliant, Matt. Just can't see it happening. Too much money.
Just before I throw it to Pete, because probably the next question will open up into the wider conversation about the kind of players that we should sign. I'll just put up a couple of those charts quickly from the other day that I mentioned in case people didn't see it. First one on screen is payments to clubs in 23-24. We finished 17th, as you can see, and we received £123 million, which is a lot of money, obviously. But Liverpool, who finished third, received £171 million. So about £50 million difference. It wouldn't necessarily be the same every year because a lot of it is around how many games you're on TV and stuff like that. But you can see it's about 50 million and you get incremental increases or a lot of money for every place you finish higher in the Premier League. So there's 50 million there. And this chart from Swiss Ramble, which was who's really good, obviously, this was posted after the group stage, I think, or for qualifying for the last 16, and it shows what the English clubs have made so far for playing in the Champions League. Man City 64 million, Arsenal 86 million, Liverpool 82 million, Aston Villa 70 million, and obviously Arsenal and Aston Villa are still in the competition, so they're only going to add to that sum as well. So you can see it's vast sums of money for making it. So we will make huge amounts of cash if we get there, which is obviously a very big if. So that kind of informs what we're discussing. So Pete, I'll throw Matheus Cunha in there because we were linked with him. And so you've got two strikers in the 60 to upwards bracket, 60 million upwards bracket. What do you think about the principles of that kind of signing? And then feel free to comment on them individually as well if you want.
I don't think that Forest unless they make big sales, are really going to be in a position to be spending 60, 70, 80 million pounds on footballers. Personally, I think it's very easy to look at those numbers and see, okay, that's 120 million pounds pouring into the football club. But the truth is that once you secure the players that have got you there, which is, 6, 7, 8, 9, even more players that will need new contracts and will have justified them. You're already losing an awful lot of money in wage bills, and it's often the wage bill that gives you a problem as a football club, as I think you'll have seen with the sort of Leicester journey over recent years. I don't think that it's realistic to suddenly expect Forest to be operating with Champions League budgets just because we've qualified for it once. If we do that, the reality is that the chances of Forest qualifying for the Champions League again are still vanishingly slim. And I'm not being pessimistic or miserable. It's been a remarkable, brilliant journey. But you can't expect all those football clubs that have massive, vast resources to stand still and let us do that again. It's going to be a monumental challenge to compete in that competition and also in the Premier League. I slightly worry about what will happen to expectations and all that sort of stuff. I know it's natural, but I'd love us to be in a position where we can all just enjoy another Premier League season with the European competition on top and still be very happy if we're a top half Premier League side, because I think that's the realistic situation we're in. And I know there'll be some people screaming at me, but Mr. Marinakis is ambitious and all that sort of stuff. That's fine, but there's an awful lot of ambitious clubs in this division. And as I've said before, the odds are stacked massively against us. Even Aston Villa and Newcastle, we don't have the revenue to compete with those clubs. Right now, they're bigger football clubs with bigger stadiums, much better corporate facilities, all that sort of stuff. And it's tremendously hard to compete. My personal opinion, and people will say this is dull or unambitious whatsoever, whatever, is that Forest should keep on doing what they're doing right now. Our recruitment has been brilliant. We find players who can thrive at Premier League level, who we can add value to, who we can keep developing, who can grow together, just like this brilliant team have done, and that keeps us progressing. But we can't suddenly say, right, we're in a Champions League if indeed we make it. We're going to start spending the sorts of money that those other teams do, because what happens to you if you're not in the Champions League the next season? And if we're not, that's not a failure. Being anywhere near it is a massive success for this football club. And you have to prepare as a team that's not going to have the Champions League every season right now, because we just can't demand to be there. So look, for me, I think if Forest can keep doing that work where they're looking at players on an upward curve, like we touched on with the Gyokeres situation, I think it would be sort of mad for Forest to sign a 26-year-old, 27-year-old striker, whatever he is, for £70 million with no option of that being another big resale after. Realistically, that's going to be his big deal. And look, well, there's a predictable comment here from James, and I get it. Stop being practical. It's time to dream, right? That'll be the response from lots of people to the sort of stuff I'm saying. But I'm not being miserable about it. I'm absolutely loving it. For me, what Forest have done with players like Murillo and throughout the team, it's ridiculous, really, isn't it? Look at what the wide players are doing now, what they cost us, and Milenkovic. I don't understand why looking to keep doing that sort of thing would be deemed unambitious or something that you shouldn't dream about. For me, the dream is us being brilliantly run and finding those sorts of gems and polishing them, and the team coming together to be more than the sum of its parts and upsetting the apple cart. That's much more a dream to me than signing players at 70, 80 million pounds who are already their best. That for me, that's not exciting or romantic, and I also think it's just unrealistic.
Would you revise that opinion if we referenced a big sale? So we make a big sale. Say, I'm plucking a name out of the sky. Say we sell Elanga for 50 million quid. Would you entertain a big name signing there, which is the kind of thing they might do to cheer up fans a bit? Would you say we went out and bought Cunha as his replacement for 60 million? Would you like that?
Well, I think Cunha's a brilliant player and he would improve us massively. So I wouldn't be remotely against it. But I also don't think I'm not sure it's sensible business for us to be spending £60 million on one player. I mean, if you think about the list of players that most of us probably feel like we need if we're going to be competing at a high level in Europe, we're probably looking at, in fact, I think if I said 4 or 5, I think people would say that's ridiculous and we need more than that. You can't be doing that and signing players for £60 million plus. Where is that money coming from? We're already a loss-making club who struggle with the financial regulations, which are for most clubs tighter in Europe than they are in the Premier League, and we're only okay right now because we sold Brennan Johnson for £50 million and he cost us nothing. And to answer that question, Steve, I would have absolutely signed Gibbs White, and I heavily campaigned for it all of that summer. But Gibbs White is a player who was absolutely on an upward curve that we signed for £25 million up front, rising to about 40 at the moment, I think, who holds that value and is now worth more than that. He for me, that's just really good sense. So it's like the Moneyball theory, right? People talk about Moneyball and they'll say it as if it's just sort of picking random statistical players out of nowhere and it's not money and stuff. What it actually means is just signing value. And if you need to put money down to sign value, then that's absolutely something that I would support. But I just don't think that we should be signing players for a lot of money who it's just a sunk cost then. I think we have to be looking to think about the future all the time. And the future isn't just going to be Forest coasting in the Champions League forever.
Anything to add, Mikey, before we move on that whole because it's probably the big talking point of our whole recruitment strategy in the summer. Anything you want to add?
That was lovely. I enjoyed that. A bit back and forth. I think I'm kind of where Pete is. I just think we need to find that balance between we're doing something that nobody expected us to do. So you want to show ambition. And like the guys in the chat have said, we do have an incredibly ambitious owner. So we'll have that itch that we all have. Come on, let's get them in. Let's push. Let's see how far we can go. But it's just balancing that with a bit of realism that if perhaps the next couple of seasons aren't like this, that we don't stuff the club up, basically. Because my mind goes back to Leeds of the 90s. Remember when they hit the Champions League and they were giving Seth Johnson 60 grand a week contracts and buying all these players, and they got to the semis, but then look at them and they dropped like a stone. And obviously Pete's already referenced Leicester. You look at them in recent seasons where they are now. I just don't want to temper any optimism because I've got a lot of faith in what we're doing at the moment and how the club's being run. And I just think if we do get over the line, I think there'll be some smart recruitment. We may have to sell one. I think we will. I think one will go to finance maybe 2 or 3 coming in, but I don't think it'll be the 60 million players. I think you're probably talking half that, but maybe a couple of them. And to really add that depth and that strength. And I'd love to see a few new contracts, as Pete referenced, for some of these people that have got us there. So Callum Hudson-Odoi, Nico Williams going into the last couple of years of their contracts. We want to keep these players because even in a couple of years, they'll have a resale value. So it's just about being smart, knowing where you are, showing that ambition, but not at the detriment of putting the club in jeopardy. That's kind of where I am. Not sitting on the fence, just being realistic and saying you can do both, but you just have to be really smart about it.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same sort of camp. I think 60 million quid is still pretty ambitious. Like Viktor Gyokeres, to be specific, these are the kind of players that if a Chelsea or an Arsenal come in, we're not going to get them, I don't think, because they're going to offer more wages. Wages are such a big thing, and Pete referenced Leicester's wage bill got them in all kinds of trouble. It was almost 200 million quid a year. That's as big a concern for me. So signing the younger players for now, instead of signing someone for 12 million quid, we could go out and we could sign a younger player for 30 million quid and then sell them on still. So I think we've gone up a bracket in the transfer window, but we've not jumped the line to the front of the queue where, the biggest clubs in Europe are going to be wanting players like Gyokeres, I think. So I think we will be ambitious, but I think that is maybe a step too far. I think Cunha might be more realistic than Gyokeres. For a couple of reasons. I mean, his disciplinary record is a bit problematic and it might put clubs off. And that's the kind of way that we might swoop in for someone like that. So, I think I'm sort of in the middle of where things are. So, it's a big debate and we'll pick up on it. I can see lots of comments. We'll do more on this as we go along. You want to come in, Pete? Go on.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying that it's not really about the number. I'd be totally supportive of Forest spending £60 million on a player if it was a brilliant deal for the football club. All I'm really saying is that I don't think it's a sensible market for Forest to be in looking for finished products realistically. There might be the odd one that makes sense. Like perhaps you find a 30-year-old beast in central midfield who just is incredibly experienced and knows the job and can really add value there. That's what I was sort of hinting at with the Moneyball thing. It's about being sensible, and that doesn't just mean not spending money. Hence what I said about Gibbs White. If there are players there with huge potential who you think can come in and have a massive influence on the football club and do that in the long term, or provide you future financial security by being an asset that you can sell on for a lot more, then that's absolutely what we should be looking to do. I don't know what the budgets are going to look like. I know there's been some referencing in the comments to the championship season falling off the PSR and such like. I don't think it's as simple as that, because you add in another Premier League season and it's a season of spending an awful lot of money on wages and all that sort of stuff. We're not a club that's just been making profit because we're in the Premier League and there's vast riches. It's nobody does. It just doesn't really work like that. And just one other thing, there's like a sort of sense. Sometimes there's a feeling that there's like a gatekeeping of optimism and ambition and stuff. I'm as optimistic and ambitious about the future of this football club as anyone. It's all incredibly exciting, but it doesn't mean that you're not ambitious if you don't want to spend ruinous amounts of money on your football club. I wanted to see it last and thrive like it is doing right now. And there's a model in operation right now that has been brilliantly successful, unbelievably successful, really. You look at what people around the country think about our football club right now, and they list the players in our first team, and they're insanely jealous. They're jealous of the footballers they are right now, and they're jealous of the recruitment and the structure that put them in place for the amount of money that they did. It's an absurd first 11 that has been put together on like minor, a shoestring at the level we are in the. If you look at third in the Premier League, it's nothing. And it's remarkable. For me, the optimism is, can we keep doing that? Maybe you ratchet it up a little bit. Maybe you put more money down if you've got the sort of cash flow to be doing that. But I just think you're still doing it with the end view that these are players that can come here, develop, make what we have better, work together, become a sellable option in the long term, or have a massive impact at the club for a long time.
Can I just add something to that, Matt? Sorry, mate. I was just nodding when Pete was going on. I just had a look. So Cunha's 25, and by all accounts, he's got a minimum release clause. Now, the reason Cunha appeals to me more than Gyokeres is that he can play anywhere in that front three. He can lead the line. He's by far the best player at Wolves. He'd get in most teams, and he's Brazilian, and we know we've got a bit of a Brazilian core. So that appeals to me much more, because if you signed him, I know he's only a year younger than Gyokeres, I get that, but if you signed him and then sold him in a couple of years' time, you could still make your money back on him, I would have thought. And he's not peachy as a footballer. And you put him with better players, especially if you're in Europe, he appeals to me a lot more, and I could make more of a case for that. Would we then have to sell somebody? Maybe. Would we have to tighten up? Perhaps. Is that our one big deal? Probably. But yeah, 60 million quid for a footballer, you'd have to tick a lot of boxes for me. But I think Cunha ticks a lot more than Gyokeres, if I'm honest. That's where I'm coming from.
I think Gyokeres ticks as many boxes, if not more, but I just don't think it's realistic. I mean, Gyokeres, well, he fits exactly how we play, doesn't he? As that spearhead number 9. But I think the wider point I accept. I mean, like Pete said, when you think like Man United signed Rasmus Højlund for like 70 million quid from Atalanta, and then you don't have to sign players at that level. It all comes down to recruitment. Like we'd all love to sign Brian Mbeumo. Well, Brentford got him for, I don't know how much he actually paid for him, but it wasn't 50 million quid or the 60 million cost now. It's identifying the talent and bringing them in at the right time for the right price. And I do think that's what we've been really good at. And we can still do that, but now we'll have a bit more money, and we can, the window to the talent that we can go for is hopefully, a bigger, vaster one with more quality that our really good recruitment team can aim to sign. So I do think that, and we'll, like I say, we'll pick out some names shortly. This has gone long. We've done 30 minutes already, and I knew this would.
We haven't even said anything yet.
Yeah, we haven't even got to a few of the names. I'll get everyone's thoughts on. Just before we move on, thanks to Trent Navigation as ever. We've referenced Brighton already. You can watch the game at the Nav. It's on TV Saturday. It's a 5:15 p.m. kickoff. Obviously, you can watch it indoors and outdoors. Get your dinner there, make a day of it. It should be a good game, and we'll preview it in full on Thursday. So do join us for that, and thanks to Nav for their support. Let me just throw out a few other names that we've been linked with. This is going to go on all summer. I mean, the season hasn't even ended yet, but Douglas Luiz back on the table, reportedly in Italian media, also Italian media for Tomori, the central defender, England international, of course. Jobe Bellingham from Sunderland, very tentatively linked and will be with a host of Premier League clubs. Mikey, any names, any thoughts on those names there specifically?
Yeah, all really good players. I like Jobe Bellingham. I love watching that Sunderland team, if anybody's seen them, full of young, enthusiastic kids, basically, and they're all brilliant. So there's a couple in there that I wouldn't mind having a look at. Douglas Luiz, yeah, he's done it. He's been there, absolute quality player. Tomori, yeah, I think he probably should be in England squad there or thereabouts. He's just as good as some of them that have called up. I know he's got the Derby links. I'm not bothered about that. Our best manager ever came from Derby, so don't care about that. So, yeah, I mean, these are all players that we absolutely should be discussing and players that would make a big difference to our squad, I would have thought, and probably won't break the bank as much as one of those forward players where you really have to pay top dollar, don't you? Because they're game changers. They win you the game in an instant, whereas these guys are ones that are to give you the solidity of your team. A Douglas Luiz, a centre back Tomori. There's a centre back I'll talk about in a bit from the Championship who I think is better than him. But yeah, they're all good, and they're all the level that should cement us if we're in the Champions League or if we're in a European competition. They're all very, very good players. So again, back to Pete's point, can a deal be done? Is it a sensible one? Does the player want to come here? All those things we need to kind of discuss. But yeah, they're all good names, Matt. There's none that jump out there and I think, no. They're all worth a discussion.
I'll throw in two more names that people in the chat have mentioned for Pete. Jonathan David consistently comes up, the striker. I think Lille, isn't it? Canadian international. And also, I think Lille as well. Angel Gomes, I've seen mentioned in the chat today. I think both would be available on free transfers. So interesting names. What about all that, Pete?
Angel Gomes, I really like as a footballer, but I personally don't see him in a Nuno team. I think even Premier League football might not be ideal for him. There are teams that he could probably do a really good job for, but I think he's best playing in that deep role as a incredibly intense playmaker who is everything is going through him, sort of metronome type footballer, and he's seriously good at it. From what I gather, he's not having a great time of it this season. So I'm not sure what's going on there, whether that's because his contract's winding down or what. So I don't see him as a fit for us personally. I think we need somebody in there with real physicality and athleticism, to be honest. And I don't think he's that sort of player. I think if you're more of a Man City type side in the looking out for a real sort of metronomic passer, then he'd be a real asset, and he's a lovely footballer, but probably not for us right now. Jonathan David is an odd one, isn't it? Because you look at his record and it seems sort of remarkable that he's both running out of contract and also not seemingly in regular headlines for big moves. So I can't say I know an awful lot about him. I don't know whether there's something more going on there or what, but you'd imagine based on just purely on the goal scoring of the guy that he's going to be a hell of a free transfer for someone, unless it's the case that he's running that contract down and he's putting himself in a position where he can get an enormous signing on fee, which I guess would be fair enough. So, perhaps it's the sort of name that you see cropping up at Al Nassr or something, and he's being paid 600 grand a week. But I'm not sure. I think his goal scoring record is pretty phenomenal, so it'd be worth a look for anyone. On those other names you mentioned, Tomori, massively not for me. I'm not sure I really get it with him right now. When I've seen him play this season, he's looked quite off it, and 27, 28, I think. Probably pretty big wages given he went from Chelsea to Milan, and they'd have had to pay him quite well to get that deal done. I'm not sure it makes an awful lot of sense in terms of the future for us. Trying to remember who the other ones. Oh, Douglas Luiz. I think we talked about him quite a lot of times, haven't we? I think he comes into our side and improves us pretty quickly. It's probably not the sort of deal I'd be looking to do because he's gone from big Premier League wages to the biggest paying club in Italy, and it's going to be an expensive bit of business that. But as I said, sometimes that sort of quality that can raise the level is worth paying for. Personally, I'd probably be looking for someone a bit more up and coming, but I get that there are parts of your team where you're going to want that experience, especially going into a new competition that basically none of our players have played in.
Very good. I'll throw some other names. Kevin mentions Kevin De Bruyne for a season. Fantastic. I think he might end up in Saudi Arabia, I would imagine. Johan Visser, who is a genuine target, and I could definitely see that one happening and going back in for him. Michelle mentions about Chris Brass, says he's left Forest. He's mentioned this before. I've not seen it. Has that happened, Pete? Have you seen that?
I certainly saw a report at some point that he'd been snapped up by the FA, I think. Some talent pathway stuff there, I think. So it wouldn't be a massive surprise because it's well thought of in those sorts of circles, isn't it? I don't think I've seen anything official from Forest, but obviously you spoke to him not that long ago. Do you think that'd be a loss for the club?
Yeah, I did. I checked his LinkedIn page as people post what they do on jobs for all, and there was nothing on there. Would it hurt recruitment? I don't think so, because as Pete says, he was in charge of loans and player pathways. It was more an academy and player development thing, which it would hurt there, but not in this conversation. Right. I think that covers all the names that I've seen in the chat. Paul mentions Darren Pratley as a good one. Yuri Alberto. That's what I was going to say. Nathan Joyce is on this week. We were going to talk about Sao Paulo and buying into their youth team and what that would mean. So I'll play this game with Nathan. I'm going to play with the other lads about who we would sign, and it'd be quite interesting to see who he recommends. Right, before we move on, I'll shoehorn in our other advert with thanks to Global Telemetrics, and then we'll talk about the players that we would like to sign. So a little 25-second video for you as ever, and then we'll discuss it briefly on the other side. You'll see why.
After initially making the call at 7:30 last night, roughly, reported it stolen.
What was your experience like getting through to the...
Straight away.
Straight away.
Yeah,
So
straight away.
When you rang through to Global Telemetrics...
I was sort of rung them earlier.
How was that, man?
Incredible. So the first part, if your car gets stolen, Global Telemetrics will find it for you, touch wood, as testified there by someone. The second part, with the grace of a gazelle that's been mauled by a lion on the Serengeti, was me getting out of a Porsche at the track day that me and Mikey went to at Donington Park last week. Thanks to Global Telemetrics for inviting us. I got driven around the track by one of the owners of the company in his new Porsche that had 600 miles on the clock. I think I said last week that I might be driving, and I was so relieved that I wasn't, to be honest, because when we got there, we found out it was the cars that people owned that they were being driven around, so we weren't going to do it, but thankfully. But yeah, 140 miles an hour around the track, barely keeping my breakfast down at times, to be honest. It was a lot of fun. Mikey, you had a good day, didn't you?
I did. It was great. I tell you what was embarrassing, though, is when you drive into Donington, for those that have drove in, there's a load of people at the front that are taking all the pictures of these supercars. And there's me rocking up in a Volkswagen Golf. I felt like really embarrassed. And I even revved my thing just to see if I could get anybody to look. But no, there was some. I'm not a big petrol head or anything, but it was really interesting. Some amazing cars there, and the guys there looked after us, and it was a really enjoyable day. And some of the speeds they were going at, frightening.
Well, literally when you're in there.
It was great. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, a lot of fun. So thanks to them. Thanks to those guys for that, as we said. Right, let's go into the players that we'd like to sign. I'll let Pete go first, because you submitted a load of names.
How long have we got?
I know. Right. The first one you submitted, the main one, I said pick your favourite, and you said Florentino Luiz. So for people who don't know, I put Bayern Munich in and update the graphic. He plays for Benfica. He's a defensive midfielder, 25, lots of Champions League experience. He's rough. It says he's valued at 20 million there, but that could be any figure really. It depends on what the market dictates. Talk to us about him, and then also give us a few of these other names, and we'll see how many football hipsters are in the chat. If you're one of the 357 people who know these players, do hit like and help me out as well. Right, Pete, talk to us about him and the other players you'd like to sign.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert on any of these people, but the reason I mentioned doing the graphic on him really was because we've been linked before. I think it was last summer. It might have been the summer before, actually.
Both, I think it was.
Both was it. I guess that sort of position and that sort of money, he might be more than that. I think certainly in the past he's been talked about as sort of a 30-35 million pound plus player, I think. Those sorts of rumours seem to have quietened down a little bit, and I think we've spoken before about Forest maybe shopping in this pool where the sort of circumstances of the player aren't perfect for the biggest clubs to come nipping in, and he's 25 now. So I wonder if the fact that he's slightly beyond that age where you'd expect someone to be getting snapped up from Portugal might bring other clubs into the reckoning potentially. I mean, from what I've seen of him, he just looks like the ultimate win ball, pass ball footballer, and I sort of think that someone in that mould would be absolutely perfect for this team. Someone who covers a lot of ground, really athletic and competitive, just wants to hunt that ball, get it, and give it to somebody who can do damage. There's such a gaping hole in the Forest team for someone who can do that. Next to Elliot Anderson, I guess, in the sort of current system, and maybe he's the sort of guy who could be that guy. I mean, I'm really not sort of suggesting it's a deal that has to be done or anything like that, because I've got absolutely no clue when it comes to looking at how a player might adapt and all that sort of thing. But he's a name we've been linked before, and someone who I think might fit the profile. There's another player at Porto, Alan Varela, who I think is maybe a little bit more of a sort of cultured technician type footballer than Luiz, but probably a similar profile in that he is a legitimate six, and can really bring some strength to that position. And I do think it's a position where if we could get a deal right, we could massively raise probably the potential of the team, but probably also raise the floor as well, which I think might be something that's really important, because we've seen with Forest that when things go wrong, they can go quite wrong, can't they? Like, we can suddenly look very overrun and very sort of vulnerable. And I sort of think someone in that area who just gives real confidence, and that is proactive and is always looking to nick the ball and is hunting for it, that could make a big difference to us, I think. I mean, on that, there's a few other names. I think we're sort of looking for our Villa's Kamara or our Palace's Decore type player, although he's often not very fit. That's what I'd really like. But whether there's another N'Golo Kante out there somewhere, then hopefully we can find it. But I suspect every football club in the world is looking for that. There's the other names that I sent to you. I think there's Morten Frendrup at Genoa looks pretty good. I really like Lewis Ferguson as well. I think he plays. He's playing in Bologna, but plays a sort of more attacking role at the moment. He's probably more likely a sort of advanced 8 or even a 10. But I think he's someone who brings all of the sort of competitive instincts and battling tendency. Someone who could do a real box-to-box, organised, energetic job for us in central midfield. So he's someone I'll be looking at as well. But that's my sort of centre mid list. Thought about, I think.
Love it. Do drop your names in the chat as well, and I'll put them up, because I'm sure we'll have some interesting ones. Jonathan Davies gets a mention again as well. Did I say Tyler Adams from Darren? I think we missed the boat on him. Good player, but Bournemouth aren't going to sell. Not for low money, are they? He'd be a good one, certainly. Right, I'll do mine because it's sort of linked, and then we'll do Mikey's next. So just bear with me 1 second. Okay, this breaks all of our recruitment models that we've been discussing a bit. But so I'm not an expert on world recruitment, but this player came to mind straight away as a number 6 who could run our midfield. Everyone knows I love João Palhinha. He's gone to Bayern Munich. He's not had a great season. I think he's only played 12 times in the Bundesliga, and he's had a few injury issues. So I wonder if he'd be available I was thinking loan this summer. or transfer. Obviously, the downside is he's 29, and they paid about 40 million quid for him, so they're going to want to recoup something very high. So that's why I was thinking loan. But I was going back to what Pete said. The big area and the obvious area in our starting 11 to improve is, as we've said repeatedly, that position alongside Elliot Anderson, someone who can, win ball, keep ball. And Polina did that for Fulham. It's interesting that they've actually coped quite well without him, and they've adapted their midfield to not play that way. And that's sort of what we've done this season. But he would give us that flexibility. That kind of player is the person I'd be looking for. So yeah, João Polina is, he's the wrong side of the age bracket that we would look to sign. But I just know he's a really good player. But obviously, like I say, I don't have Forest global network and knowledge, and I'm sure there's other alternatives out there. But it was that position that I was thinking of. The other player I was thinking of is a different kind of player. He's Mikey's main one. I know Mikey's got a few other names. I did think one other name before I throw it to Mikey. The kid who scored for Greece yesterday, plays for Genk. Is it Korestas? Obviously, there's a lot of good young talent in Greece and in around the Greek national team. So we might have a bit of a leg up there. Some of it plays for Olympiacos. So whether that's an avenue to explore as well. Again, I didn't raise it particularly because I'm not an expert on top Greek talent, but Forest will be. There's another avenue there. Let me throw it to Mikey. This was a player that I was really sprung to mind straight away, and all three of us had him on our list. Chris Rigg. Talk to us, Mikey, about Chris Rigg.
So for those that haven't seen him, this is a serious footballer, this kid. So he's from Hebburn, he's 17. He already plays for the England under-19s. He's played about 30 times this season for Sunderland. He can play anywhere. I think the last game he played in behind the front man, but I've seen him play deep. Technically, he's brilliant. He's not really, I sound like a doctor now, but he's not really filled out his body yet. He's 17 years old. So if you remember all the great midfielders that really fill out when they're in their early 20s. So he's nowhere near what he's going to be. And he's brilliant, honestly, this lad. So, I spoke about Gyokeres earlier and the fact I think somebody should have took a chance on him a few seasons back. This is a no-brainer for me. If we can get a deal for this lad done, I don't know whether there's any interest, although I did see it in the media a few weeks ago, so maybe there is. But I think he's a wonderful footballer. Every time I watch Sunderland, they play a little bit like us. So not necessarily as deep, but they're very quick going forward. They've got a lot of explosive players, a lot of talent in that team, a lot of people. I think they've got the youngest age in the Championship. They've got Bellingham, Rigg, Lefay, Isidore. Off the defence is about 15. Or they look it. They are a very exciting team, and he stands out in that group. He's a great player. So I think if we can get somebody like that in, that's a no-brainer, because he'll be playing with better players in the best league in the world on a long contract. In a few years' time, when he's reaching what he can be, he's going to be great. A lot of people scoffed when we bought Gibbs White because he was ripping it up in the Championship, wasn't he, for Swansea and Sheffield United? And look at him now. I'm not saying this guy's going to be as good as that, but what I've seen from a 17-year-old, he looks completely at home, and I think he's one of the best talents I've seen in that division for years. So I think there's one. Can I just speak about one more really quickly, Matt? Defender at Burnley. I mean, of course I'm going to say a defender at Burnley. They've got the best defensive record in Europe. Centre back. I think his name's. I wrote it down here. I've seen him a few times. Maxime Esteve. He's 22. He's French. He is a Rolls Royce of a footballer. That lad. Seriously, if you watch Burnley. He's wonderful. The guy next to him. Go on, mate.
There's been links with him and Forest previously. I think it was the season that we came up that there was, by the sounds of it, some fairly serious interest. Really classy centre half, isn't he?
He really is. And if you think, Bolly might be leaving, we might have to sell one of our centre backs, maybe Murillo, I don't know, for big money. We tend to go to three at the back quite a lot now. We may be doing that in Europe. We're probably going to need another centre back. Now, obviously, it depends if Burnley come up or not. But there's two players playing the league below us that I think, even at this point in time, would add significant upside to our team and our squad. And I think that's the sort of area that I'd be looking at. So whilst I agree with you guys about, you look at the team now, what's it missing? it's missing that destroyer in midfield. So, we were hoping Sangare could do it. Yates does it here and there, but it really needs that quality player. I'm thinking kind of around that as well. So what can we bring in for a squad where we could be having as many as 10 or 12 more games next season because of Europe? We're going to need additional players. So there's 2 for you. And honestly, if you've not seen these 2 lads, go watch them because they're brilliant.
I think Chris Rigg plays into what I was saying before about the kind of players we could sign. I mean, when you watch him, he's like the archetypal young midfielder who can get the ball in any position. He can get out of trouble. He can pass. He's got an eye for goal. When we were a team that was promoted and finishing 17th, you couldn't sign a Chris Rigg. You could have, but now you can if you've just got in the Champions League. I think Newcastle and West Ham were linked, but that's the kind of player I think we could sign and fits into what I'm thinking. Don't go out and sign a load of 17-year-olds, but that top talent, English player, I think he'd be really good. I'll just throw in a couple of other names briefly that people have mentioned. Was this a chap you mentioned, Pete, Morgan Frendrup?
Yeah, I like the look of him a lot. I think he's only. You says in the comments he's only 23. Sorry, somebody's just ringing me on Teams, which is irritating. I didn't turn that off. Apologies. Yeah, I really like the look of him. His defensive numbers in Serie A are absolutely outrageous. And he just looks like a really organised, just a really proper footballer who's playing proper number 6 role from what I've seen so far this season, but I think can really get up and down the pitch as well. 2 good feet. I've seen him getting into the box and finishing from late runs as well. So yeah, I do really like the look of him. Just on the Sunderland chat, I mean, if I was in the position that Forest are in right now with properly upwardly mobile, hopefully a bit of money to spend, I'd be sticking offers in for Rigg, Bellingham, and Watson personally. And forgetting the age side of things, these are all seriously mature-looking young footballers with remarkable versatility as well, particularly when it comes to Chris Rigg and Bellingham, who I think I've seen both of them play 6, 8, 10, and up front, which is pretty phenomenal, really, at such a young stage in their career. But I think. Some people will worry about having that amount of investment in really young players and needing experience and such like, but those are the sorts of players who I'd love to have on the bench chomping at the bit to get on and make an impact in various positions. And that versatility means that they count for more than one squad player in a sense, because they can come on in so many different roles. So, I mean, I'd be all over that sort of business.
Yeah, we don't want Sunderland to get promoted, because if they get promoted, they keep it for one season. We want to murderously rip through their squad, and cash in and be horrible Premier League clubs there. Right, Paul mentions Hugo Ekitike. He's been mentioned a few times as well. Steve says about the lad from Southampton is better than Rigg. I don't know if he is. Firstly,
we're talking
Dibbling.
Yeah,
very different players, I think.
Yeah, he's more of a forward, isn't he? Also, going back to what I was saying, loads of clubs are going to be in for Tyler Dibbling, and I don't know where he ends up, but half the Premier League and a lot of clubs in Europe are going to be trying to buy him this summer. So maybe a player in the Championship who doesn't have any Premier League experience is more what we could get, even if we're in the Champions League. Without
We're very happy to welcome Dibbling, though. He can. He's very welcome in the squad.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He stands out in that god-awful team. So, Steve's dead right about Dibbling's a top player for sure. Talking of players at Southampton, Harwood Bellis. It's difficult to judge players when they play in such a bad team, I think, whether he's good or not. He's got a lot of pedigree. He gets in the England squad, but then Jordan Henderson gets in the England squad. Oh, I didn't say Jordan Henderson to solve our midfield problems.
I'm not sure if he can because he needs to play outside of England for a certain amount of time to avoid a massive tax bombshell. So I'm not sure if he's fulfilled that time yet. I'm not speculating. That's how the tax system works.
Very good. Dan came in with the first player I had to Google, Emmanuel Omega. Probably lots of people have heard of him.
Oh, I've heard of him. I bought him on Football Manager.
I knew you were going to say that.
He's an absolute beast. He's massive. So I'd have to see what he's like in real life, but he's good on the game.
As soon as you leaned in to say that, I knew it was going to be a Football Manager thing. Andre Santos, who's doing very well. We obviously had him, but he's got a lot of experience at Strasbourg now. He's a really good midfield player as well. Right, I think that covers all that conversation. We'll revisit this all through the summer, no doubt, as we go along. Go on, Pete. You wanted to come in?
I was just going to say I've got about 15 names left in several different positions, so we could just do this all again. I only did 7 minutes. I did about 7 positions for you. I didn't realise it was only one. I've got a real serious transfer document compiled.
We'll do it as a separate show, the Pete Blackburn transfer show.
And no one wants that.
I was watching Sky Sports News earlier. It's unrecognisable. There was something about, God, what was it called? The Ballers League. Have you seen this?
Absolute
bollocks. They
is
got
that the thing that PK's involved with, or is that something else?
It might be. They had Luis Figo. They had Shearer. They had John Terry. Lineker was there, and they were running a draft. And they were picking. I couldn't tell if it was influencers, YouTube idiots. Ironic, I know. Henry Lansbury was in the draft as well. Really randomly, he wasn't even the first pick.
He's a gardener, wasn't he?
Yeah. So anyway, I referenced this. It was on Sky Sports News, and they did a like 10 minutes on it, and I was like, "What is this nonsense?"
Did you not get a call for the YouTube idiots section then?
I'm not a big enough idiot yet. Right. The other thing, just quickly before we finish final thoughts, Gibbs White is in the England squad tonight, by the look of it. Poor old Gibbs White, Mikey. He must be like a dog chasing his tail. He's left out. He's called up. He's left out of the matchday squad. Then Tuchel singing his praises, talking about him like he's been amazing and everything. And now he's in the squad. Just briefly, what do you make of it all?
I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what to make of that England squad, the first England squad, the 4 goalkeepers, the people that shouldn't be in there, the crazy call-ups, leaving arguably the most informed player, Gibbs White, in the league, not being called up until there were injuries and pull-outs. The question is he going to get on tonight? That's the question. And if he does, would he get more than 5 minutes? I'm not so sure. If I'm Gibbs White, I just do what he's doing, which is say the right things, do the right things, work hard, be megally impressive for your football club, and then the clamour will grow, not just in Nottingham, but outside of Nottingham, to have somebody like him in the squad, because he should be one of the first names on there. I know I'm biased. I know we're all biased, but you name me a better number 10 or a better player that's on form at the moment in the Premier League, making goals, scoring goals, captaining his club more often than not. It's insane that he's not. It's insane it's not in there. So let's see if he gets on tonight. Let's hope he does. Let's hope he has half an hour if he doesn't start. So if he creates or scores a goal, and then we can, we'll all show the England manager what we see every week in him and what the majority of football fans in the country see every week. And for some reason he can't see it. So that's probably all I'll say. But good luck to him. I hope he smashes it.
I mean, surely in terms of man management, he should give him some minutes tonight. He's messed the guy around. So, yeah, I think he should. Any quick thoughts on that, Pete, before we move on?
Not really. I hope he gets some time and is able to shine. Hopefully, whatever time he gets, the game state is reasonable for him to get on the ball and really show what he can do. I got the sort of hysteria about him not being in the squad, and I absolutely shared that. That seemed, really unfair and pretty odd to me. Not starting in the team, I think, is perfectly reasonable, as much as I'd love for him to be in there, because his best position is currently occupied by one of the very best players in the world, and someone who will be one of the best England players ever, presumably. I think it's slightly odd that he doesn't seem to quite get the consideration that he could do it in a deeper role, because I'm not sure there's an awful lot that Curtis Jones can do that Morgan Gibbs White can't do. But I don't think it's not sort of a travesty that he's not claimed that spot. But fingers crossed he gets his moment, because I think we all believe that he can make an impact at the level, whether that's starting, whether that's coming off the bench, whatever. And I think he's got every chance of earning a really regular role.
Been once to have 357 people with us an hour in on an International Break Monday, where we talked nonsensical transfer stuff virtually the whole time about players we'd like to sign that probably won't, although I'd love to get some of these lads. So do us a favour and hit like, that'd be great, and subscribe if you haven't already. Mikey, any final thoughts before we go?
Just a quick one. I just want to tell you a little story. Honestly, it's only quick and it is Forest related and it's clean, I promise. So, honestly, it's true. So, I was out walking my dog the other day and I had my Forest hat on, and this guy stopped me because he saw I had my Forest hat on, and he was talking about he used to work at the club for 50 years, and I knew who he was because I've seen him around, and he didn't know that, and he was talking about how he not fell out of love with it, but now he's back in love with it because of what this team and this club are doing and how it feels in the city. And on the same day, I ran off and I ran past a load of people who all had Forest shirts on. Then I ran into the postman who stopped me and talked about Forest. And then the night afterwards, I went to see my uncle at the Theatre Royal because he was supporting John Cooper Clarke, a bit of poetry. I came out of Theatre Royal with my parents and Lindsay, and there were a load of lads. And you know when you get drunken lads, you're thinking, oh, God, especially with your parents, and you move them away. But they were singing the Murillo song. So I was joined in. Then I jumped on the tram, and the first conversation I heard was a wife to her husband saying, oh, I'm not sure Chris Wood will start because I think they'll... So it can't just be me hearing and seeing all this in the city, right? So the feeling around at the moment, especially for people that maybe don't live in the city or don't see the city outside of match days, is something that I've not seen for quite a while, to be honest. Everybody, every generation seems to be talking about it, and you see more Forest shirts, and you know, from the older generation to us, to the kids having a beer, to you know, I walked past my house the other day, and a kid had scrawled on the floor with chalk, and you're thinking, oh God, and then you look a bit closer, and he scrawled a big Forest badge on outside on our estate, and I tweeted it this morning. So like they're inspiring everybody, this team, inspiring all the generations, the kids, they're wearing the shirts, they're drawing on the floor. It's just like, I've not felt or seen or heard anything like this in the city for quite a while. And I include the promotion and trying to stay up. This feels like, you know, I used the analogy the other week about being in the championship rounds of a boxing match. This feels like we're going into those rounds and we're so close to winning. We're so close to getting over the line, to shocking everybody, and the buzz is there, and you can sense it, and you can see it, and you can feel it when you're walking around the city. So, you know, we're going into April 3rd. I mean, it's absolutely nuts. No wonder everybody's talking about it and seeing it. So for those that listen or watch the podcast and don't live in the city, this is what it's like here. It's the buzz is insane. So I just hope we can just get over the line, because this team deserve it.
A quick story, you said.
Great story. quick story. Yeah, but you know, I just wanted to share what I'm seeing out. It's great to see.
That made us. I think that made Pete laugh as well. It made me laugh.
Yeah, that was
Danscape. Mikey flexing his exciting social life. There you go. You're a busy man, Mikey. There you go.
Yeah.
Pete Blackburn, anything you want to add before we go?
just a short story. No. I was just imagining Mikey doing that sort of that inspiring monologue at the next live show, and then looking out to the audience, and then just being pint glasses thrown everywhere, people roaring, the whole city buzzing for it. So that's something to look forward to. Hopefully he could deliver another one of those. But no, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for everyone for sticking with us for a slightly pointless podcast in a way, but it's been fun.
It's been fun. It's like the Box Park video where the pints are in the air. It's just that story. Pete referenced the live show, so it is not far away. It's next Thursday, April the 3rd, at the Trent Navigation. Get your tickets. I'll put the link in the description. I think it's already there, actually. They're only £5, so it should be a good night, no doubt. Lewis is the headline, obviously, not to degrade Mikey Temps, Greg, and Pete, who's making his on-stage debut. Are you excited, Pete?
Yeah, looking forward to it. Yeah, it should be really fun.
Good. That's good.
Sorry, did you want a longer answer than that?
I was expecting one.
Well, you've made it clear you want people to be brief, and even after Mikey's uproarious speech, you gave him a little dig. So I'm going to do what I'm told and be quick.
You're a good man. Right, just quickly from me then, I'll just say what's coming up this week. Like I referenced, Nathan Joy's tomorrow. We'll do a little bit for this transfer chat as well, I'm sure. And like I say, we'll discuss Evangelos Marinakis I think he's buying into Sao Paulo's youth team, which could have some good benefits for us. Wednesday is with Adam Summerton, the TNT Sports commentator, and I wanted to ask him about playing in Europe, because it looks like we're going to be in Europe in some form. He commentates on a lot of European football, so pick his brains about how our tactics match up in Europe, and if we could upset the apple cart a bit next season as well. And then Thursday match preview, Friday opposition preview with Az Phillips. I've done that already. I'll put that out for members in advance. And then Saturday post-match show. One last thing. This is from listener James Goldsbury. If you've got any charity events you want to plug, give me a shout. James says, I'm competing in an ultramarathon in June with 2 friends in memory of my brother-in-law, Adam Bennett Bull, who we lost sadly in July last year at the age of 34, who grew up in Chilwell around the corner from Gary Birtles. He's raising money for a charity called Phoenix Heroes, who do great work to support military veterans, who I think Adam was, just from if I'm remembering that right from reading it. So if you want to donate to James in memory of Adam, I'll drop the link in the description for that as well. And like I say, get in touch with any charitable endeavours that you have going on, and I'll happily give them a plug over the summer. Right, if you've enjoyed this, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe, consider channel membership and get early access to things like Adam Summerton and Nathan Joyce, or just give us that lovely 5-star review, or Patreon as well, I should say. Right, Mikey Clarke, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Kevin said he enjoyed my story. There was a bit of creative license in there, but most of it was true.
Enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it. Yeah.
But thank you. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin, for giving me and Pete the chance to say that we did enjoy the story, and we were just laughing. It was supposed to be short, and I think it was about 4 minutes. Pete Blackburn, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks very much to the chaps. We shall be back tomorrow. Have a good day, everyone. And if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.